The cashier does not look up. The bottle is already on the belt. Clear PET, a German label, a small registered mark near the neck. The drink is ordinary, almost cheap. Then the register prints a second line, 25 cents. Not a surcharge on flavor, not a tip. A separate price welded to the empty shape the liquid will abandon. You pay it. Outside, the city is unremarkable. A supermarket car park after rain. The cap cracks. 3 swallows and the contents are gone. What remains should be refuse. In most markets, it is refuse. Here, the empty disposable bottle still carries a legally created cash value. The thirst is finished. The 25 cents are not. That is the contradiction this film follows. Germany's bottle deposit system does not plead for virtue at the bin. It posts a refund on a used container, and then constructs a return market large enough to buy that container back. People bag the emptiness. People stack it in hallways. After midnight, someone reaches into a public bin because statute has turned residue into money. The path is mechanical. A mandatory deposit on covered single-use beverage packaging. A standardized DPG marking. Retailer take-back duties.
Machines that read the mark. A clearinghouse that moves the refund between the shop that sold the full bottle and the shop that accepted the husk. The myth is wider than the statute. The 25-cent rule applies to covered single-use containers, not every bottle on a German shelf. Reusable glass, crates, and refillable circuits live under different amounts and different circulation rules. This is not a hymn to nature. It is a price that outlives the drink, and a national apparatus built to honor that price when the eligible empty comes home.
The modern German supermarket looks as if this arrangement were ancient. It is not. For most of the post-war decades, refillable beer and water moved in crates, washed and sent out again, while one-way packaging grew in the shadow of convenience. Policy arrived late, and it arrived as a quota problem before it arrived as a coin. In 1991, the packaging ordinance tried to force industry toward reuse and recovery with targets rather than a till surcharge. The targets did not hold the way their authors hoped. One-way plastic and cans kept winning the fridge. By the early 2000s, Berlin reached for a harder instrument. In 2003, a mandatory deposit landed on specified single-use drinks packaging. The amount chosen for those covered one-way containers was 25 euro cents, high enough in the design to be felt at the register, and high enough to dwarf the familiar 8-cent beer bottle pledge that already governed much of the reusable trade. The intent, visible in the architecture, was punitive toward disposability and protective toward the refillable circuit. The market heard a different instruction. Retailers and fillers learned to live with the surcharge.
Shoppers learned to treat the extra line as a loan. PET still marched through the chilled aisle because the bottle was light, stackable, and branded. The deposit did not abolish one-way packaging. It conscripted it. A second legal generation arrived with the Packaging Act, the Verpackungsgesetz, which from 2019 recast duties that the older ordinance had scattered. Registration, take-back, and the one-way deposit were no longer a temporary experiment. They were infrastructure. Deutsche Pfandsystem GmbH, the industry-owned operator known as DPG, already ran the marking and clearing layer for single use. The act made that layer harder to dodge. Then the covered set grew again. Germany's Environment Agency records an expansion of the deposit obligation from 1 January 2024. Dairy drinks, additional plastic formats, and other previously exempt single-use lines were pulled under the same 25-cent roof. The shelf did not become uniformly pledged. Wine in glass, certain cartons, and the reusable fleet remained under other rules. The 2024 date matters because it shows the mechanism spreading by statute, not by brand fashion. What most visitors miss is the fork in the law.
Single-use, Einweg, is a one-journey container wearing a security mark. Its economic life after consumption is a refund claim against a national clearing web. Reusable, Mehrweg, is a circulating asset. It is washed, inspected, refilled, and sent out under deposit amounts that are often lower and under take-back customs tied to the types a shop actually sells. Confusing the two is how tourists smash a crate logic into a reverse vending slot and wait for a miracle. The blind spot is older than the 2024 list.
People remember the coin and forget the jurisdiction. They remember the machine and forget that the machine is only lawful because a first distributor registered the packaging, applied the DPG identifier, and charged the deposit down the wholesale chain. Without that paperwork, the empty object is just plastic. With it, the object is a bearer instrument for 25 cents, valid at obligated retailers across the country. So the contradiction from the checkout line is not a cultural quirk. It is the residue of a 20-year attempt to make disposal expensive without banning the package. The state did not confiscate the bottle.
It gave the bottle a price after death, then ordered the shops that profit from fullness to honor emptiness. The years are specific. The amounts are specific. The coverage is incomplete on purpose, and the empty container in your hand is still waiting to be spent.
Every functioning price needs a cast that cannot walk away. Deutsche Pfandsystem GmbH sits at the center of the one-way circuit. It is not a ministry. It is the private operator created by trade and industry to administer marking, participation contracts, and the settlement of deposits among retailers. If the bottle is to be recognized from Kiel to Konstanz, someone has to license the identifier and police the claim. DPG sells that recognition. The Umweltbundesamt, the Federal Environment Agency, writes the public face of the obligation. It states the 25-cent amount, the duty of shops to take packaging back, the consumer's right to reimbursement, and the requirement that deposits be cleared nationwide. The agency does not empty the machines. It defines the field on which the machines stand. Fillers and first distributors face a colder arithmetic. To place covered single-use drinks on the German market, they must join the system, mark the packaging, and advance the deposit into the chain. Their incentive is access to the aisle.
Their risk is operational. Every unmarked or wrongly marked unit is a future rejection at the hopper, a customer argument, a pallet that cannot be settled. Retailers live inside the physical consequence. A discounter that sells thousands of one-way bottles a day must also absorb thousands of foreign empties, including brands it never stocked, provided the material type matches what it offers, and the shop exceeds the small store thresholds written into the rules. Floor space becomes a warehouse for other companies' packaging. Staff time becomes counting, unjamming, bagging crushed PET. The take-back duty is the price of selling the full product. At the other end of the incentive map stands the informal collector. Pensioners, students, and people between wages work the bins outside stations and festivals. They are not employees of DPG. They are freelance harvesters of a statutory price. When the bottle is left on a wall, they complete the return the original buyer abandoned. The law did not hire them. The 25 cents did. Reverse vending manufacturers supply the steel throats. Their machines read the mark, test the shape, and decide whether this empty is a claim or a fraud.
They are paid when retailers cannot process volume by hand. Their motive is throughput. The system's motive is verification. No one in this cast is required to love recycling. The filler wants market access. The shop wants to sell drinks without becoming an unpaid dump. The agency wants a measured return rate. The collector wants coins. The operator wants the marks to remain scarce enough to be trusted. Hidden motive is the wrong phrase. The motives are printed on the receipt. Each actor stays in the chain because leaving it costs more than staying. A lost listing, a legal duty, a forfeited refund, a machine that no longer speaks the national language of emptiness.
Begin with the full bottle under fluorescent light. Before it ever reaches a shopper, a first distributor has registered the packaging with the one-way system and applied the DPG security mark. The mark is the passport. Without it, the later machine will spit the object back like a counterfeit note. With it, the container is enrolled in a claim that can be presented hundreds of kilometers from the original shelf. The deposit now moves as bookkeeping, not as a coin in the crate. The filler charges the retailer charges the customer. At checkout, the drink and the pledge appear as separate lines, so the refund later can be unwound without arguing about the price of water. The shopper leaves with two things that look like one, a beverage and a 25-cent liability the shop is prepared to cancel. The liquid dies in an office, a train, a park. Here the path splits, and the split is the conflict. If the empty is carried to an obligated retailer, the law requires a take-back.
Larger stores that sell covered single-use drinks must accept DPG-marked empties of the materials they handle, including labels they never ordered.
A shop that stocks cola in PET becomes, by that fact, a redemption desk for mineral water, energy drinks, and festival leftovers in the same polymer. Smaller outlets live under narrower duties. The statute is not a romantic open door. It is a set of thresholds designed so a kiosk is not buried by a stadium. The reverse vending machine is where idealism meets plastic fatigue. The hopper accepts the bottle. Sensors look for the mark, the barcode, the contour. Eligible containers are counted and usually compacted so they cannot be redeemed twice. A voucher prints. The voucher is not a compliment. It is a debt of the store, payable at the till against groceries or as cash according to house practice. The shopper's 25 cents reappear as purchasing power. The bottle disappears into a bag of crushed claims. Data leave with the crush. Each accepted unit is a record. Mark valid, material class, count. Those records are the raw material of clearing. A supermarket in Munich may take back far more empties than it sold on a given week because commuters redeem near the office. A petrol station shop on a holiday route may sell far more than it ever sees again. Left alone, the first shop would bleed refunds it never collected, and the second would sit on deposits it never repaid. The national clearing obligation exists to stop that hemorrhage. Participants report what they charged and what they refunded. Net positions are settled. The 25 cents migrate from the seller of fullness to the acceptor of emptiness. DPG's own process description and the Environment Agency's legal summary agree on the skeleton. A legally required 25-cent deposit on covered single-use packaging, a registered return path, consumer reimbursement, a reverse vending network, and nationwide reconciliation among retailers. That is the factual nucleus. Everything cinematic is only that nucleus under load. Now the other fork. The bottle is dropped in a household bin, left on gravel, or tossed because the refund is smaller than the walk. No voucher prints. No machine writes a line. The consumer does not receive the 25 cents. The pledge stays with whoever collected it and was never presented with a valid return. That is not a subplot. It is the enforcement tooth. A deposit that is always returned is a rental.
A deposit that can be forfeited is a penalty dressed as a refund. Behavior changes because some people will not leave money on the ground, and because those who do transfer value to the rest of the chain. Retailers fight the volume. Festival weekends turn back rooms into PET dunes. Machines jam on crushed cups and foreign glass. Staff argue with tourists who feed reusable bottles into a single-use throat. The take-back duty does not come with unlimited floor space. Shops lobby for tighter material matching, cleaner marks, fewer fraudulent stickers peeled from one bottle and warmed onto another. Fraud is not the majority path. It is the reason the mark is engineered to be hard to copy, and the reason compaction happens before the voucher. Fillers fight the coverage line. Every expansion, including the 2024 widening recorded by the Environment Agency, pulls a previously comfortable category into marking, reporting, and the risk of rejected pallets. Dairy and plastic did not ask to become a redemption object. The statute made it one. Industry letters talk of transition costs and shelf resets. The agency talks of closed loops and reduced litter. Both can be true at once.
The conflict is not good versus evil. It is convenience versus a mandated second logistics network running backward through the same doors. Reusable packaging watches from the adjacent track. Its deposits are often smaller, its circulation depends on washing plants, standard neck finishes, and retailers willing to store wet crates. The one-way system, paradoxically, became smoother for the shopper. One mark, one typical amount for covered disposables, machines in every large store. The refillable circuit remains a physical relationship with a brewery or water filler. Policy still praises reuse. The familiar mechanism that people actually complete on a Tuesday night is the single-use refund, because the machine is closer than the crate. Competitors feel the distortion. A drink sold in covered one-way PET carries a visible extra line that a carton in an exempt class may not. After each legal expansion, the playing field tilts again. Marketing teams redesign sleeves so the DPG identifier sits where a scanner can see it.
Discount chains advertise the ease of return as if it were hospitality rather than a duty they cannot legally refuse. Nothing resolves on a single date.
Return rates rise where machines are dense and fall where housing has no storage. Informal collectors thicken around events and thin when weather is cruel. Clearing files contain mismatches, delayed reports, disputed counts. The wound is structural. A nation that wanted to punish disposable bottles built the most efficient market those bottles have ever had, then had to keep widening the obligation because the market, once built, invited more products into the same plastic shape. Stand in front of the machine at 2241. The voucher sighs out of the slot. Somewhere, a ledger will move 25 cents from a shop that never saw this person to the shop whose steel throat just ate the evidence. If the bottle had missed this mouth, the ledger would have stayed still. That stillness is the fine. That movement is the market. The system holds because both outcomes are allowed.
A government cannot lecture a bottle into coming home. It can, however, attach a number to the empty form and watch a secondary market assemble overnight. Germany's deposit architecture is that experiment at national scale. Not a sermon about waste, not a brand campaign, a legally manufactured price that survives the product. The deeper principle is spare. Behavior follows posted value more reliably than it follows posted virtue. When statute gives a used container a redemption price, households sprout collection bags, retailers sprout machines, informal workers sprout routes between bins, and wholesalers sprout clearing files. None of those actors needed a conversion experience. They needed a number that other people would honor. That is why the distinction the law insists upon still matters after the film's machinery has been seen. Covered single-use packaging carries one kind of number and one kind of return market. Reusable packaging carries another number and a washing circuit. Collapse those categories and the price signal smears. Keep them apart, and you can watch two economic species share a refrigerator door without becoming the same animal. There is a colder aftertaste. Once a state learns that it can mint value onto trash, the temptation is to mint again. Another material, another aisle, another January expansion. Each new mark is efficient. Each new mark also conscripts more firms into reverse logistics they did not choose. The customer gains a cleaner street and a refund ritual. The worker at the hopper gains volume. The filler gains a compliance department. The collector gains a fragile wage indexed to other people's laziness. Look at the crushed PET leaving the store in a sealed sack. It is no longer a drink. It is a settled claim, a counted unit, a line that will meet another line in a clearing file. The original thirst is irrelevant. The original brand is almost irrelevant. What remains is the discovery that emptiness can be given a spot price if enough institutions agree to buy it back. Other markets hide their coercion inside interest rates or membership fees. This one prints it on the receipt in cents. The honesty is almost brutal. Pay now, recover later. Or don't, and let the number walk away from you.
If a polity can teach millions of people to carry garbage because garbage holds a posted refund, what other discarded thing is only one statute away from becoming currency?